My name is Brandon James Silva, and you're listening to Talking Nightmares, the podcast. Hello, my name is Brandon James Silva, and you're listening to Talking Nightmares, the podcast. This is episode 2, and, before I get started with this, I just want to say that I felt the need to just get straight to the point of what I really want out of this whole thing. I kind of thought that, some time ago, that if I was going to end up doing this, that I would have to have some sort of a, almost like a theatrical kind of theme to how I was going to talk about the dreams and the nightmares that I've had. And, what I've come to realize is that since watching the first recording of a podcast, I had this sense that it really isn't going to be so authentic, that if I end up doing this in a way where it feels like it's too produced or too rehearsed, actually is the word I'm looking for, then I'm not going to have the same sort of feeling that I'd be hoping to get out of this whole thing, because what it really comes down to is it's just that I want people to at least listen to the things that I experience in my own dreams, and just to kind of give you the full impression of what it is that I want people to experience, as far as relating to me and to this whole podcast, because what it really comes down to is really just that. I just want people to understand where I'm coming from, because most people, again, they don't talk about their nightmares. No one wakes up in the morning and they go to their friend. Usually, most people don't do this, and they say, "Hey, I had this dream last night." I happen to. I do. It doesn't mean that other people don't do this, but I mean, most people probably don't. They don't. I don't think make it a point, because for a lot of people, they don't even remember their dreams, and to me, it's always just been a little bit unusual. Mostly because of the fact that a lot of my inspiration and a lot of my honest sense of opinions really kind of come out of what I dream about. And I've at least thought to myself that if I'm gonna consider what I'm dreaming about as some sort of valuable time that I'm giving, then I'm gonna at least have to look at it from the perspective that not everyone's going to be doing this. And so therefore, if I'm ever trying to relate about it, like I finally am doing, in a broader way, besides in a personal style of talking, I kind of feel like this, because this is more with the hope that it's reaching a larger group of people. What I'm basically saying is I kind of just want to have this understanding known that I see these things with both a contradictive perspective, and I see it as a very concrete thing at times. So my impression changes as I have these dreams, and nightmares, because I really have times, or like anyone else who dreams a lot, yeah, sure, I have dreams that seem pretty meaningful, and then I have dreams that seem like a complete waste of time. And for me, I take it pretty personally, I guess, because I sometimes, I do this to myself, of course, but I kind of let myself down. I look into a dream, or I look forward to a dream too much to give me some sort of clarity about something, which is probably the wrong way to do it. It's not like, I don't think that's the ideal way to approach dreams. They should definitely just happen to you. It's not like something that I think is gonna be enhanced if you go about it that way. Maybe in a sense of, if you're trying to have a lucid dream, that could be a good thing. But as far as I'm concerned, I try to remind myself that it's not something you can control, and that's in fact why it's so important to me. It's almost like it's your most realistic impression that you give yourself about your own life, as far as I'm concerned. It's like you have a dream, and whether it's a bad one or a good one, it at least shows you what's going on in your life. So I kind of just wanted to at least get that immediately out of the way, because when it comes to talking to people about this stuff, I'm already kind of prepared for the critic of someone coming along and really trying to put their own opinion on it, which is good, but to me personally, I would like people to understand that, of course I understand there's multiple ways to look at this whole thing. And I do appreciate that, because obviously that's the best way to look at things sometimes, objectively. But for this second episode, I wanted to talk to you about probably some of the most unusual nightmares that I've actually had recently, because I don't know why. And it usually happens to me when I'm actually feeling pretty good, but every now and then I have a nightmare that just seems so unusual that it almost kind of leaves me with this sense of feeling like it's almost like a whole other story is happening in my dream world life. It's like if I have we're just gonna go straight into it. But if there is a whole parallel universe where some other form of consciousness, which I think most people are open-minded to believe in that. Quantum mechanics is basically that idea. But when it comes to this, sometimes I wonder, it's like, am I having an alternate reality existing somewhere that could actually be, physically existing somewhere, and is the nightmare that I'm having reflective of that? And sometimes I think to myself, maybe it is. I personally don't think anyone in our lifetime would ever prove such a thing, even if there was a science somehow to prove that. Although I think most people would just dismiss that right away. But that's just my impression of it, because sometimes I have these dreams, and they're so disturbing that it's almost like I would think it'd be unusual not to question it and say, what the fuck was that about? Because that's really what I think you should do if you have these kind of dreams. But yeah, so okay. I remember about, I think it was 2 months ago already, but I definitely had a lucid dream where all of a sudden I was just in my room, and I had this awareness that I was in this dream world. And so the first thing that I decided to do was to exit my room by my choice of floating out the window. It's like I had this awareness I always have this awareness that I'm in the dream world. The laws of physics are not the same. I'm aware that somehow I ended up there. I don't really know how it starts, but it just once it happens and I catch that awareness of a lucid experience, I just know that you can break rules because you're in a lucid dream. So in this dream, I ended up floating out the window, and I'm going to make this really fast because there's a few more I want to talk about, but I basically ended up floating around and I found this forest environment around me. And I was puzzled because usually there should be apartments or houses around, but it was just a forest and it looked like it was really ancient or something. But I just remember that I went to explore, and as I started to walk around in the forest, I had the sense that something of like a monster was nearby. I just didn't know where. And as I kind of walked around, I suddenly had this almost like a psychic vision come over me. And it was almost like a cutscene from a video game where like you see the monster's perspective, or like it was a movie where it cuts to the next scene, and I suddenly saw like this creature like laid out on this grassy patch that was just like in an open part of the field, and it just looked so unusual. It basically looked like this elongated creature that looked diseased and like malnourished. And I realized that somehow in this scene, I could feel that this creature was aware of me. And it suddenly just like sprang up because it was asleep, and it just sprang up and it started to run. And as soon as I saw this thing, it looked like it was like 8 feet long. And I knew in the dream, I thought, oh shit, this is a werewolf. And I knew that I was going to have to fight this thing just right away. And so suddenly I turned around, and all of a sudden I see this really ugly werewolf. You know, it's like, I know there's a lot of versions of werewolves, but this one was particularly ugly. And I remember it had this humanoid looking face that just looked almost like it was undeveloped, mixed with like obviously a wolf kind of creature, but it did not look at all. You know, usually you have like a werewolf look kind of cool in some way where it looks more animalistic. This thing just looked more like just an ugly creature. You know, its face was like all sunken in and like disproportionately arranged. It was really creepy. It looked diseased. Anyway, I ended up fighting this thing, and as it jumped at me, again, I had this awareness it's a dream, so I was able to basically hold it with my mind. Like I had this ability to have telepathy, and I caught this thing midair as it jumped at me, and I threw it back. I basically threw it away from me towards this tree, and this thing like rolled, and then it climbed up this tree super fast, just like an action movie. Yeah, and this thing decides to jump back at me, and I stuck my hand out to catch it again, and it's almost like I suddenly felt this like this narration come over my awareness, like a voice basically, but it was really like almost like I had my own thoughts were coming to me, where suddenly I got information about this creature. And I basically heard this voice say, "You can't stop this thing because it's so violent. You can't fight it. But what you can do is you can try to hold it still, because this is obviously not a creature that's used to being held still. I mean, it's a wild animal." So I held this thing still in midair. I don't know if you guys ever played Mortal Kombat, but it's a character where, lots of characters actually. You can use telepathy to pick them up and hold them in midair. That's basically what happened, and I saw this thing. Basically, it just made these creepy motions and movements and started to contort and spasm, and all of a sudden, I saw this thing kind of collapse midair while I was holding it, like it was in agony. You know, like it wasn't pain, but as I was trying to hold it still. And all of a sudden, I kind of felt bad for this thing. And all of a sudden, I just remember that it just vanished. Like it went back to where it came from, and it was just asleep again. And that was the end of the dream. Like I just remember I floated out of there above the forest, and I thought, wow, if that is in this forest, what else is here? So that was it was pretty shocking of a dream. I mean, like it just happened. It was done. Next dream I've had, I had one last night that actually really got me back in the mood to do this, and so just once again, straight back to the dream. It started off where I was walking around in what looked like a studio, and I was talking to these old people. It was like an old couple, and I remember it was like an old man in a trench coat, and he looked really unusual. He looked like he had like this old style like hat on, like a fedora hat, and he had like a pair of sunglasses on, very pale, and a strange old lady following around in like a trench coat. And they were like showing me this studio to rent out, because in the dream I was like looking to set up a shop somewhere. And I thought to myself, this is too good to be true. Like all of a sudden I'm in this dream and I think to myself, this is too good to be true. This place looks too nice, it's too perfect. And I just suddenly had the feeling I needed to get out of there. That whoever these people were, they were bad. I just needed to leave. And so, like I usually do in these lucid dreams, I looked for a window and I jumped out the window, and I floated out, and it was nighttime. And I remember that, and all of a sudden, it was as if I kind of was pulled into this other, I don't want to say reality, but it was like I was pulled into a different scene, like a different scenario. I just teleported into this new scenario, like a scene from a movie. And basically I just I saw a really disturbing scene. I just remember seeing a room. If you guys ever played the game Silent Hill or ever watched the movie, it looked pretty similar to that. Rusted walls. But I remember there was these cages, and as disturbing as it sounds, there was these cages that people were in, and people were basically forced to stand and basically were held prisoner in these cages, and that were just so restrictive that you couldn't even move. But basically I was in a room full of people that shoulder to shoulder almost, they were just in these cages. And as disturbing as this sounds, because it was definitely pretty unsettling dream, but all of a sudden I just had this awareness that I needed to get out of there also. It was almost like those two people, those two people I saw in the dream. It's almost like they pulled me into this hypnosis illusion or something, but I just knew I needed to get out of there. And I knew it's almost like suddenly I could feel the pain that these strangers in this room were in, and it was just as disturbing as it sounds. I mean, these people were like being tortured. I have no reason to know why, but they were just being tortured. And like as strange as this sounds, which I know other people have experienced this before too, just maybe not as common, but I started to feel pain, like actual pain in my torso. And that was pretty alarming, because it did not feel good at all. Like it was pretty intense pain. And I was pretty shocked, because I was like, what the fuck? This is a dream, and now I'm feeling actual pain. And I felt as if like the more I focused on it, I was going to end up in one of these cages. As strange as it sounds, it was almost like the energy was pulling me into a cage. The more I felt this sense of like horror, basically. And as soon as I realized I need to get out of here too, I somehow concentrated in the dream to exit that room, as if I knew I could teleport out of there. And I did. All of a sudden I get out of that other torture room, which was God, it's really disturbing. But I got out of that torture room. Excuse me. Nice beer. I got out of this torture room, and all of a sudden I think I'm back in my bed. And except it's a false awakening. I realized to myself, wait a minute, I'm somewhere else. Like I'm actually not in my room like I thought I was. It's an unfamiliar room, but I was in bed again, as if I just woke up. And as unusual as it sounds, yet again, it was like 3 for 3 again. It was 3 in a row. I couldn't believe this, but all of a sudden, I don't know why, but to the side of me, right to the side of me, is my own brother, but he's asleep, it looks like. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is he doing here? And it almost looked like someone had just dropped him on the bed, because he was like face down on the bed. And I remember seeing as if he was almost like a dead body. And I thought, what the fuck? And as I looked closely at him, because I couldn't see his face, but I could see like his arm and the back of his neck, I immediately knew it was a fucking nightmare again, because as I looked closely, I could see all of these, as grotesque as this sounds, I could see all of these wounds. Like they were outside, like, I don't know, it was almost like, it looked like scabs or something, but it looked like someone took a small knife and just like cut all over this body. And I thought, oh my God, this is disgusting. And as soon as I saw this, I thought, there's no way this is real. There's no way this horrific scene is which is disgusting, by the way. It's like, there's no way this scene is real. And I knew, again, I was in a dream. And at that point, and I don't know if anyone's going to relate to this so much. This is the one thing I do wonder if other people can do this, but I knew I was still dreaming, and I told myself, I need to wake up. Like, I need to actually wake up. And as soon as I thought that, I kind of focused. I probably focused for about 5 seconds, and I just immediately snapped out of it, and it was over. And oh wow. And yeah, it was finally just done with, and I thought, wow, 3 nightmares in a row. And it was almost like I thought to myself, what are the chances that you'd have just 3 stacked on each other? And so whatever the hell that experience was, it just reminded me that every now and then, like that werewolf dream, which was pretty terrifying, but not as nearly as horrific as these other dreams I just mentioned. But you know, those are true nightmares to me. But like, those just reminded me, like, how in the hell is our human mind capable of experiencing these things? And yet the things that we see in our actual life that have never even come close to these things. You know, who's ever seen a werewolf before? So where does our mind get this information to where it feels so real when you experience it? And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's at least worth sharing. I don't know the benefits as to why I would have a nightmare, if there's any benefit whatsoever. Yeah, if you want to break down the psychology of what all this was, I did a little bit of thinking about this, but to be honest, I didn't really want to think about this dream so much as nightmare, because it's pretty grotesque. You know, I'm the kind of person where I can't even watch horror movies if there's a lot of gore in it, just because it's disgusting to me. But this is basically on par with that. I thought, well, the only thing I could think of as to why I would have basically 3 in a row nightmares is because, in a way, it's almost like, I guess, if there's any psychology out of this, I guess somebody would say, oh, well, maybe it means that it's like your mind is telling you you're basically afraid of suffering in some sort of way, where you feel like it's a scenario where you can't control or you have no explanation for. But other than that, I have no clue. I mean, the cages, of course, is feeling stuck. You know, you feel like you're a prisoner. I think seeing your own like family member like dead next to you, or at least horrifically attacked, which, you know, nobody ever wants to see these things. But I mean, I don't know what to make of it. I have no clue. But whatever it could be, I mean, it's like, it makes you think, okay, I guess this is just something that I get to talk about then at best, because otherwise, the only thing that can really inspire me to do, it would be to draw, maybe some video game horror art, But other than that, I mean, not exactly a welcomed experience. And I'm 28 years old, so I mean, I've had quite a lot of nightmares over my lifetime. But I mean, there's no like thing, I think, where someone kind of even has the ability to prepare themselves for a nightmare. You can't do it; it just happens to you. And yeah, I think the best thing that we can do, at least as an audience to yourself, it's like when you're experiencing these things, is at least pay attention to how the whole thing played out if you can. I mean, it's like maybe there's a clue somewhere in there as to something you can pay more attention towards. But in this case, I mean, it was just very, very disturbing all around. But yeah, I just had to share these. And I mean, of course, when the dreams aren't a nightmare and they're actually a pleasant dream, it could be a nice experience. It's the one thing in the world that you can get for free, and it's like, what? I mean, how are they going to make people pay for this experience in the future, if it's ever possible? I mean, besides having a movie or some sort of a VR, virtual reality, or video game experience. But dreams, they're so unique. It's like you basically get to experience a different reality altogether. And even if they're terrifying, at least you get an interesting story out of it. So guys, I just wanted to get straight into the nightmares and share some good stories with you. Other than that, it's like, I feel like I'm gonna do the next episode. I'm gonna maybe talk a little bit more about other people's nightmares that they've shared with me. But I'm really just doing this as I go, because I mean, again, I was worried that it was going to be this feeling of a really rehearsed presence, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to make this seem like I'm somehow sitting down and writing out some fucking script. I mean, I don't want to do that. I mean, I think people see through that shit. It's all over every fucking podcast you can look for that has a big name to it for the most part. Very few that don't do that, I think. And I mean, if there's anything I could appreciate, it's having something that does not feel produced in any way. It's like a badass song. If you hear a song and it's not just completely produced in the studio where you have all these effects and just complete rendering of the actual sound, if you can just get that in a live experience where you see more of that, you get what I'm saying. It's basically the same thing. I want that to be as close to authentic as I can. So that was a fast one. Well, guys, thanks for listening again. My name is Brandon James Silva, and this was episode 2 of Talking Nightmares. Thanks so much for listening, and cheers.